At 4:17 local time, the radar blips once. Not a normal sweep, not background clutter. One solid return, clean, heavy, fast, appearing exactly where nothing should be. At first, no one in the room reacts. They never do. Screens glow, consoles murmur. One watchstander leans forward, eyes tightening, hands motionless above the controls. The contact holds for a heartbeat, then sharpens. New track, someone says in a flat, steady voice. The plot settles, altitude rising, speed increasing, no transponder, no civil code, no friendly squawk. The bearing fits nothing it should. Wrong for traffic, wrong for weather, wrong for anything meant to be here. A second sensor confirms it, then a third. The room exhales, not with relief, but with certainty. This is not noise, this is intent. A timeline starts. The track surges into an altitude band commercial traffic never touches. It doesn't drift, it doesn't adjust, it commits. The course is straight, deliberate, calculated to brush the edge of monitored airspace at an exact minute. Whoever is flying knows the geometry, knows the lines, knows exactly how close is close enough. Condition 3, the officer of the watch says, calm and measured. The words settle over the room and everything changes. Chairs roll back, headsets drop into place, a pen clicks once and begins moving across paper. Another return appears. Thermal, hot, sustained. 4 engines pushing a mast that never seems to strain as it climbs. The signature doesn't fit a patrol aircraft, doesn't fit a transport, doesn't fit anything pretending to be routine. The engines burn with steady purpose. Not sprinting, not idling, just cruising toward a corridor used only by strategic aircraft. No one says the name yet. The contact crosses another speed threshold. Mach numbers creep higher. The plotter draws a clean line untouched by the jitter that comes with uncertainty. This aircraft belongs at altitude. It was built for it. Built to stay there for hours if needed. Built to be noticed. A supervisor steps in closer. He never touches the console. He doesn't need to. The data is speaking clearly now. Wings with variable geometry. A long fuselage. Weight concentrated where weapons would sit. The math resolves into a silhouette. Everyone in the room recognizes it before the software finishes. Then the identifier flashes. A brief pause. Not shock, not fear. Recognition. A strategic bomber. Its course doesn't change. Calls go out over guard frequencies. Professional, standard, calm. The words vanish into open air and come back empty. No acknowledgement, no courtesy, no hint of confusion. The silence is deliberate. The bomber keeps climbing. Up there, the air thins and the horizon curves. From that altitude, a crew can see beyond weather and traffic, beyond the ordinary business of flight. From there, long-range systems would operate cleanly. From there, every radar sweep would paint something worth studying. Track steady, the watchstander reports. The captain arrives without ceremony. He takes his place behind the chairs, hands folded, eyes fixed on the plot. He asks for no summary. He doesn't need one. The screen is already telling the story, minute by minute. Speed, altitude, bearing, no deviation, no hesitation. Log everything, he says. The bomber reaches its planned altitude and levels with exact precision. No overshoot, no correction. The engines settle into the kind of rhythm that speaks of endurance. Then the course shifts by a single degree. Just enough to test reaction time without crossing a legal boundary. Just enough to force a decision. Phones stay quiet. No public statement. No alert. Somewhere else, other rooms are studying the same data. Somewhere else, crews are already moving. Here, the only sounds are the hush of electronics and the scratch of ink across paper. Another call goes out. Another refusal. The bomber closes on the invisible line, the one everyone knows, though no one draws it. The intercept window tightens. Minutes matter now. Soon, seconds will. CPA trending down, the plotter says. Closest point of approach narrowing. Not by chance, but by design. The bomber is flying the razor's edge of escalation, inviting a response, measuring discipline. The captain nods once. Hold. No one even blinks. The contact continues forward, massive and untroubled. A machine designed to project pressure without ever needing to make a louder statement. It doesn't rush. It doesn't conceal itself. It flies as if the sky already belongs to it. And in that calm, controlled advance, the message becomes impossible to miss. This is not a navigation mistake. This is deliberate. At 4:29, the bomber still doesn't turn. It holds course, steady and unapologetic, engines burning with a purpose no one in the room can mistake. This is not transit. This is not routine patrol. The aircraft remains just inside the envelope where reaction times matter and errors become headlines. Another call goes out. Same wording, same calm tone, no answer. Then the track accelerates again. Not dramatically, just enough to cut minutes from the intercept window. The shift is subtle, but nobody misses it. Speed increases without a climb or descent. The bomber is optimizing. Whoever is in that cockpit is not guessing. Velocity up, the plotter says. Elsewhere, alarms begin to sound. Scramble orders ripple through bases that were already half awake. Hangar doors roll open. Floodlights ignite. Pilots move at a hard jog, nearly a sprint. Helmets tucked under arms, muscle memory taking over. Ground crews break apart with practiced urgency. Hands race over panels. Ladders drop. Safety pins come free. Engines light one after another. Deep, violent roars cutting through the quiet before dawn. Inside the command space, the number of screens multiplies. New feeds open. Airfields come alive. Timelines begin to overlap. The bomber keeps pressing forward while the response rises to meet it. No one says intercept. No one has to. The strategic aircraft reaches another altitude gate and holds there, squarely inside a profile every analyst in the room recognizes. This is where systems would be configured. This is where range starts to matter. This is where posture shifts from symbolic to operational. Still no radio reply. Track stable, someone reports. The bomber makes a tiny heading correction. Barely a degree, but enough to set the calculations spinning. The new vector aligns with nothing civilian. It intersects no airway. It avoids weather with surgical precision. This path wasn't stumbled into. It was chosen. That is when the first NATO fighters leave the runway. On the screens, their symbols appear as accelerating triangles, climbing hard and turning toward a rendezvous point calculated to meet the bomber without cutting across it too aggressively. This is not pursuit. It is geometry solved in real time. Inside the fighter cockpits, the pilots say very little. Breathing steady, hands light on the controls. They've done this before, not with this aircraft, not in this exact configuration, but the rules remain the same. Identify. Shadow. Do not provoke. Do not break off. Back in the command center, the bomber remains dominant on the plot. Larger, less agile, impossible to ignore. Its radar emissions are clean and disciplined, sweeping in patterns meant to gather information without crossing thresholds that would justify escalation. It is not feeling around blindly, it is collecting. Electronic activity confirmed, the EW officer says. Passive, but active enough. The captain says nothing. This was expected. The bomber is close enough now to read reactions, close enough to feel the weight of attention, close enough to force the other side to show its hand without technically crossing a line. The fighters climb to altitude and level on an intercept heading that brings them in from the side rather than the front. That choice matters. Head-on closes raise tension. Lateral approaches signal control. The bomber does not react. No turn, no speed change, no flare of defensive posture. It flies as if the intercept were only another variable already factored into the mission. Minutes pass. The distance collapses to visual range. The fighter sensors confirm what radar already revealed. Massive wings, swept geometry, engines arranged for range and persistence. A machine built for global reach, now lingering at the edge of someone else's patience. Still no radio call. The fighters slide into position, offset, disciplined, close enough to read markings, close enough to be seen in return. This is the moment when misunderstandings can become disasters. When two crews trained for dominance occupy the same patch of sky, held apart by nothing but rules and restraint. Then the bomber makes another tiny adjustment. Not away. Inward. Inside the command center, the clock seems louder than it should. If it holds this vector, someone says quietly, we're inside the decision window. The captain nods once. No orders change. The fighters hold station. The bomber keeps pressing forward, expressionless in its own mechanical way. The sky is crowded now, not with aircraft, but with consequences. Every movement is logged. Every second is time-stamped. Every system is listening. This is no longer a test of detection. It is a test of nerve. At 441, the distance narrows to the point where every motion matters. The fighters are now beam offset just enough to remain non-threatening, close enough to pull surface detail through their sensors. The bomber fills the display. Long fuselage, variable sweep wings locked into cruise, engines steady, no evasive posture, no hint of surprise. It flies like it expected company. Inside the intercepting aircraft, the pilots remain silent. Their heads-up displays are clean, parameters stable, systems safe, cameras recording. This is documentation, not confrontation. The bomber holds altitude with perfect precision. That matters. At this height, air density favors both range and sensor performance. At this height, capability is not theoretical. It is obvious. Back in the command center, the EW picture sharpens. The bomber's emissions remain controlled but unmistakably present. Radar operating in modes designed to observe without provoking. A careful balance, enough to collect, not enough to trigger. They're painting, the EW officer says. Selective. That isn't an accident, that is craft. The fighters keep position. Their own radars stay quiet, leaning on passive sensors and shared data. Silence here is strength. Every second they don't transmit is a second the bomber learns nothing new. Then the bomber changes again, so slightly that anyone not watching the numbers would miss it. A small nose adjustment, a fractional shift in heading. The line on the plot bends inward, not away. A probe, not a commitment. Inside the intercept window, this is where things go wrong. The rules are clear but unforgiving. If the bomber continues on this vector, reaction time compresses to seconds. If it turns away, the encounter cools without a word. If it does nothing, the standoff stretches on. Fragile, tense, and dangerous. The fighters mirror the shift, matching the geometry without closing the distance. Discipline over instinct. Presence without pressure. Maintain station, the lead pilot says. Calm, controlled, recorded. The bomber offers nothing in return. From this angle, sensors can see the heat plumes from its engines. Steady, symmetrical, unchanged. No throttle spikes, no defensive cues. The aircraft is not bracing. It is not preparing to run. It is waiting. In the command center, the captain leans forward slightly, still silent. He watches the clocks, the vectors, the margins shrinking. This is the narrowest part of the funnel, the place where escalation lives. CPA 1.5, the plotter reports. Closest point of approach, tightening. The bomber holds altitude and speed. That alone is a message. Control, confidence. A crew that knows exactly how close it is allowed to come and exactly how close it should not. The fighter cameras capture everything. Markings, panel seams, antenna placements. Intelligence gathered in real time without a single aggressive act. The bomber is being cataloged second by second, whether it likes it or not. Then another change. This time not in heading, but in timing. A slight reduction in speed, almost imperceptible but enough to reshape the intercept geometry. The window stretches by seconds, and seconds matter. Inside the fighters, breathing stays slow. No one reaches for switches. No voices rise. This is restraint at extreme speed. Intent unclear, an analyst says. That's the point, another answers. Ambiguity is leverage. The bomber's radar sweeps pause for a fraction of a cycle, then resume. The fighter's warning receivers stay quiet. No lock, no tone. The line still hasn't been crossed. Not yet. At this altitude, the sky looks almost calm. Sunlight flashes across metal. Vapor trails stretch thin and straight. To anyone outside the moment, it might seem almost peaceful. It isn't. Every system on both sides is awake. Every operator is measuring. Every second without escalation raises the cost of whatever comes next. The bomber reaches the edge of the invisible line, the one defined not by borders, but by doctrine and restraint. And there it holds, balanced on the point of the spear. For one long moment, nothing changes. No turn, no call, no signal. Inside the intercept window, silence is the loudest sound of all. This is the moment, someone says quietly in the command center. Not a question, a fact. If the bomber advances now, the response will be immediate. If it turns away, the encounter ends without drama. Both crews know it. Both sides have worked out the same math. The fighters hold station. The bomber hesitates. And in that hesitation, the world seems to stop breathing, because this is where miscalculation becomes history. At 4:46, something changes, but not in the sky. The bomber is still there, holding the edge, engines steady, wings locked. The fighters remain offset and disciplined. To anyone looking from the outside, it appears frozen. A tableau of metal and vapor suspended at altitude. But beneath that stillness, the picture shifts. In rooms the bomber cannot see, new timelines begin quietly and precisely. No broadcast, no dramatic signal, no visible surge of activity to reveal the next move. The response does not announce itself, it rearranges. A message races up the chain of command and returns just as quickly. The wording is brief, its meaning is anything but. The intercept geometry stays exactly the same. That is no accident. Pressure without movement. Movement invites interpretation. Stillness forces the other side to think. The bomber's sensors continue their controlled sweeps, but the pattern begins to narrow. Shorter cycles, tighter arcs. It is listening more carefully now, testing whether the electromagnetic picture has shifted. It has. The change is slight, so slight it would vanish without a baseline for comparison. Background noise shifts. Passive returns begin stacking differently. The sky hasn't become louder, but it has become crowded. The bomber's crew would sense that change before they could fully define it. On the fighters, nothing dramatic happens. No switches snap, no weapons are armed. Cameras keep recording. Silence keeps doing its work. The aircraft remain exactly where doctrine places them. Close enough to matter, distant enough to reduce tension. Hold, comes the instruction again. Same word, same calm tone. Then the bomber makes its next move. Not forward, not away, sideways. A shallow turn, measured in degrees rather than emotion, begins to bleed lateral distance without giving up position. It is a concession wrapped in ambiguity, a way to test whether the pressure eases once the challenge is no longer directly head-on. Inside the command center, the plot responds at once. Vectors shift, calculations refresh. The change buys time, first seconds, then minutes. That's a signal, an analyst says. The captain nods once. He does not smile. This is not a win. It is a conversation carried out at altitude in fractions of miles and watts of power. The fighters adjust together, matching the bomber's lateral drift without moving in. No pursuit, no shadowing that could be mistaken for aggression. Just presence, steady, controlled, impossible to ignore. The bomber reduces speed again, slightly. Not enough to call it a turnaway, enough to alter the math. The decision window begins to widen instead of tighten. Reaction timelines stretch. The sharp edge starts to fade. Its radar emissions soften. Not off, never off. Just less probing. Like a listener stepping back from a closed door. The fighters remain quiet. Somewhere out of sight, additional assets settle into positions they never need to announce. Layers form. Redundancy appears where moments earlier none was visible. The sky itself looks unchanged, but the outcome no longer does. The bomber's crew knows it too. They have the same instruments. They feel the same shift. Strategic aircraft are built not only to project power, but to read an environment with precision. Then comes another shallow turn. This one leaves no room for doubt. The nose angles away from the line, not sharply, not dramatically, but enough to break the geometry that defined the standoff. The bomber is not withdrawing in a way that invites headlines. It is disengaging in a way that preserves dignity. Inside the intercepting fighters, posture stays the same. They do not close in, they do not wave, they do not signal. Professional restraint to the very end. Vector confirmed, the plotter says. Diverging. The captain lets out the smallest breath. No one speaks. No one celebrates. There is nothing to celebrate. The bomber has made its choice, and because of that, the sky is already less dangerous. The fighters hold their positions a moment longer, just long enough to confirm the trend. It holds. The distance opens by tenths of a mile, then whole miles. The bomber keeps its altitude, but its intent has changed. The intercept window closes not with impact, but with calculation. This is how it ends, someone says softly. The bomber continues on its new heading, the line on the plot bending away from trouble. No radio calls, no public statement, no final gesture. The U.S. response was fast, but never loud. It did not depend on threats or theatrics. It relied on geometry, discipline, and the understanding that the strongest signal is often the one never spoken. As the distance grows and the sky begins to clear, one truth settles across the room. The message was received and no words were needed. At 5:02, the bomber exits the monitored sector. Not abruptly, not in a climb or dive. It leaves the same way it arrived, steady, controlled, and shaped to look routine to anyone not paying close attention. The plot line stretches outward, thinning as the distance increases. The aircraft becomes just another return, then a smaller one, then more symbol than threat. The fighters do not chase. They hold their position long enough to confirm the bomber's intent, then ease back onto their own vectors, engines settling as fuel calculations quietly update. No victory pass, no gestures. The encounter is already finished, and extending it would say more than anyone once said. In the command center, the room exhales for the first time in nearly an hour. Screens rewind, data layers stack, timelines replay second by second. Not for drama, but for discipline. Every speed change, every fractional heading adjustment, every pause in radar emissions is logged and cross-checked. This is where the real work starts. There is no announcement, no press alert, no statement polished for public release. In modern deterrence, silence is not emptiness. It is restraint with purpose. If the record needs to speak later, it will. The captain stays until the analysis is underway, then steps back. His job was never to win a headline. It was to prevent one. Around the room, watchstanders mark their logs. Pens move, keyboards tap. The professionalism never slips. The encounter did not end because someone lost their nerve. It ended because the math no longer favored risk. Event resolved, the officer of the watch says. Resolved, not defeated, not repelled. Words matter. Outside, the sky looks exactly the same. High-altitude contrails drift and fade. Commercial traffic continues along distant airways, unaware of how close the morning came to becoming something very different. That, too, is by design. In the hours that follow, briefings ripple outward. Not explanations, but summaries. Not warnings, but facts. The kind of information that adjusts posture without demanding attention. This is what deterrence looks like now. No weapons fired, no missiles launched, no rhetoric exchanged, just a clear understanding that lines can be enforced without crossing them. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, the bomber continues its mission. The crew returns to routine. Their own notes are likely already taking shape. Precise, technical, careful in wording. They will record the fighters, the geometry, the moment when the sky no longer felt neutral. Back here, the final logs are signed. Timestamps frame the incident, beginning, peak, resolution. It becomes one more entry in a long history of encounters that never reached the headlines and never needed to. Because the real outcome was never the turnaway itself. It was what did not happen. No miscalculation, no escalation, no irreversible decision made at altitude. The system held. Not because it was loud, not because it was fast. Because it was disciplined. This is the part the public rarely sees. Not the intercept alone, but the restraint surrounding it. The training that keeps voices even. The procedures that keep hands away from unnecessary action. The confidence to hold position when instinct demands movement. Still, one question lingers in the background, quiet and unspoken. What if the bomber had not turned? The answer exists. It simply does not need to be voiced. Everyone in that room knows the sequence. Everyone knows how quickly calm can become chaos once certain thresholds are crossed. That knowledge is the point. The bomber's departure does not close a chapter. It adds another line to the ledger, another data point, another measure of resolve. Tomorrow, the sky will be watched again. The lines will remain invisible, the systems will remain ready, and if another contact appears where nothing should be, if another aircraft tests the edge of patience, the response will look just as uneventful to anyone not truly watching. Because the most effective show of force is the one that never becomes a fight. No missiles launched, no shots fired, and still everything changed.